A retired veteran walks into a crowded shelter to drop off old gear and freezes. Behind cold steel bars, a scarred K9 sits to a private whistle only one partner knows. But the chip says the dog belongs to a dead company, not the army. Papers don't match. Doors start closing. And when quiet questions turn loud, the lights go out and smoke rolls in. Strange men show up after midnight. A hidden file hints at dogs taken, re-tagged, and sold. The veteran has one knee that screams, one ally who risks everything, and one command that could save a life. As a box truck vanishes into the dark, the truth bites back. Will he break the system? Or will the system break him before he can bring his partner home? The fluorescent lights hum overhead as Harlan stands frozen, his breath caught in his throat. The box of old K9 gear slips from his fingers, hitting the concrete floor with a dull thud. Metal tags and leather collars spill across his worn combat boots, scattering like memories he'd tried to bury. But he can't look away from those amber eyes. Intelligent, searching, hauntingly familiar, staring back at him through the chain-link barrier with unmistakable recognition. "It can't be," he whispers, his voice rough with disbelief and a sudden, overwhelming hope that claws at his chest. But it is. Even through the tarnished fence, Harlan recognizes every detail. The distinctive, jagged scar along the muzzle from their last deployment together when they'd taken fire in that abandoned compound, the slight expectant tilt of the head that always meant Valor was waiting for instructions, the intense, intelligent focus that set him apart from other dogs. The same focus that had saved Harlan's life more times than he could count. His hands shake uncontrollably as he reaches for the laminated kennel card hanging from a rusted clip. Male Belgian Malinois, approximately 8 years old. Owner surrender. The typed words blur before his eyes as moisture gathers at their corners. No mention of military service. No hint of the dog's true identity or distinguished career. No acknowledgement of the Purple Heart that should be pinned to his collar. Just another unwanted pet, discarded when no longer useful. The other dogs in the shelter continue their desperate chorus of barks and whines, their cacophony echoing off the concrete walls. But Valor remains perfectly still, maintaining the disciplined sight position as if they were back on the training field in Afghanistan. Only his tail betrays his excitement, thumping steadily against the concrete floor in a rhythm Harlan would know anywhere. The same rhythm that used to lull him to sleep on their worst nights abroad. Harlan's bad knee protests sharply as he crouches down, sending a familiar jolt of pain up his thigh. He presses his palm against the cold chain link, fingers curling through the metal diamonds. "Hey, buddy," he says softly, using the informal tone reserved for off-duty moments when they were alone in their quarters. "What happened to you? Where have you been all this time?" Valor inches forward with cautious precision, his black nose twitching rapidly. The familiar scent seems to trigger something deep in his canine memory. His tail wags faster, sweeping the concrete with increasing urgency, and a small, plaintive whine escapes his throat. When his cold, damp nose touches Harlan's fingers through the fence, memories flood back with crushing force, overwhelming Harlan's carefully constructed defenses. Training sessions in the pre-dawn chill, breath fogging in the air as they worked through drills again and again. Long, tense nights on patrol, Valor's warm presence beside him the only comfort in hostile territory. The proud set of those ears when they completed a successful mission, both of them dirty and exhausted, but alive. The last morning, watching the transport van drive away through a haze of medication after his injury, never imagining it would be the final time he'd see his partner. A door slams somewhere in the building, the sound sharp and sudden like distant gunfire, making Harlan flinch violently. Old combat instincts kick in instantly. He straightens up despite his protesting knee, scanning the corridor for potential threats, his hand instinctively reaching for a sidearm that isn't there anymore. But it's just a shelter volunteer walking past with a yellow mop bucket, giving him a friendly, oblivious nod. "Sir?" Another voice cuts through his hypervigilance, young and cheerful. A staff member approaches, clipboard clutched to her chest, her name tag reading Melissa. "Are you interested in meeting this one? He came in yesterday, seems incredibly well trained, but a bit standoffish with the other volunteers. Military background by chance?" Harlan clears his throat, fighting to keep his voice steady when his entire world has just tilted on its axis. "This dog, who surrendered him exactly? Do you have names? Paperwork?" "Let me check." She flips through papers attached to her clipboard, scanning with practiced efficiency. "Looks like it was a private security company called Norcross Protective. Said he wasn't performing to their standards anymore, aging out of their program." She frowns slightly, creating little creases between her eyebrows. "Though between you and me, he's got some of the best obedience I've seen in 15 years working here. Watch this." She makes a subtle hand signal, not military standard protocol, but close enough to reveal someone's attempt to repurpose his training. Valor's eyes flick to Harlan for a split second, a flash of questioning loyalty before he responds, executing a perfect downstay with the precision that once earned him commendations. "See? Someone put a lot of work into training him." She smiles, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "Would you like to meet him in our interaction area? You seem to have a connection already." Harlan nods stiffly, not trusting himself to speak without, his voice betraying the storm of emotions raging inside him. He watches as she unlocks the kennel with practiced efficiency, clips a frayed blue lead to Valor's plain black collar. The dog moves with the same fluid grace he remembers from their operational days. But there's a new tension in his powerful muscles, a wariness that speaks of harsh treatment that wasn't there before. In the meeting room, a small, sterile space with worn rubber flooring and a few plastic chairs scarred with bite marks from previous occupants. Valor maintains his professional demeanor until the staff member leaves them alone. The moment the door clicks shut, the soldier facade crumbles. He presses against Harlan's legs with desperate intent, his entire body trembling slightly like it did during thunderstorms that reminded him of artillery fire. "I've got you," Harlan murmurs, his voice cracking as he sinks to his knees despite the pain. His hands move with practiced familiarity over the dog's sides, checking for injuries with the same thoroughness he always had after missions. There are new scars under the coarse fur, stories written in healed wounds, and patches where hair grows differently now. Valor lets out a long, shuddering breath and leans harder, nearly knocking Harlan off balance with the weight of his relief. "Private security company," Harlan says under his breath, cold anger building in his chest like gathering storm clouds. 2 years of searching, of filing reports and making calls. 2 years of hitting bureaucratic walls and being told by superior officers to let it go. That working dogs get reassigned all the time. 2 years while Valor was out there, being used by the very people they were supposed to testify against in that procurement fraud case. The dog looks up at him with complete focus, ears forward and alert, waiting for direction like no time has passed between them. But time has passed. It shows starkly in the gray around Valor's once black muzzle, in the new scars they both carry, visible and invisible. Harlan's calloused hand finds the familiar spot behind Valor's ear where the fur grows in a different direction, and the big dog melts against him, finally allowing himself to relax completely for what might be the first time in years. "I've got you," Harlan says again, this time like a solemn vow that settles deep in his bones. and I'm going to find out what happened. We both are. They're not getting away with this." Valor's tail sweeps across the floor in wide, deliberate arcs. Once, twice, 3 times. His eyes never leave Harlan's face, showing the same unshakable trust that used to carry them through the worst moments of their service together. Through firefights and sandstorms and the crushing loneliness of war. Whatever was done to him in those missing years, whatever lies were told and whatever hardships endured, that fundamental trust remained unbroken between handler and dog, a bond stronger than the systems that had failed them, both. The staff member returns, ready to discuss adoption paperwork, but Harlan's already shaking his head. "This isn't just any dog. He's military trained. Service number 7K435 FOM. He was stolen, not surrendered." His voice carries the weight of certainty, fingers curling into a tight fist at his side. Her practiced smile falters, bright customer service demeanor cracking under the intensity of Harlan's stare. "Let me get our director," she says, backing away with uncertain steps. Minutes later, Laurel Keene arrives, a tall woman with auburn hair pulled back in a practical bun, wisps escaping around her temples from a long day. She carries herself with quiet authority, shoulders squared despite the evident fatigue in her eyes. Reading glasses perched on her nose, she carefully reviews the intake forms, brow furrowing as she flips between pages. "I understand your concern, Mr. Pierce, but legally our hands are tied." Her voice is professional, but tinged with genuine regret. "The microchip registration links to Norcross Protective Services." She taps the paperwork with a pen-worn finger, drawing his attention to the highlighted company name. "There's also an aggressive behavior flag in the system, which triggers an automatic hold. County regulations are very strict about this." "Aggressive?" Harlan's voice rises, echoing off the sterile walls of the small office. A muscle jumps in his jaw as he fights to control his temper. "He's a trained military K9. I was his handler for 4 years. That dog saved my life more times than I can count." "I believe you." Laurel's voice softens as she meets his eyes, the professional barrier momentarily lowering. "But without documentation, we can't release him. The chip doesn't show any military registration or service history at all." She sets the papers down with a sigh. "If we ignore protocol, the county board could step in and order immediate disposal, especially with that behavior flag. My hands would be completely tied then." The fluorescent lights buzz overhead with an insistent, irritating hum as Harlan processes this, their harsh glow casting unflattering shadows across the room. Valor watches them both through the glass partition, ears perked forward, still maintaining perfect position despite the tension crackling in the room. His amber eyes never leave Harlan's face. "What's the case number?" Harlan asks finally, forcing his voice level, swallowing back the tide of emotion threatening to break his composure. Laurel reads it off the form. "KC 2023-847. She hesitates, then adds quietly, leaning closer as if sharing a secret. "We have 72 hours before the hold becomes permanent. After that, decisions about his fate won't be in my hands anymore." Back in his truck, Harlan's hands shake so badly he drops his keys twice before managing to start the engine. He takes a deep breath, steadying himself against the steering wheel before dialing a number he hasn't used in months. It rings twice, the sound unnaturally loud in the quiet cab. "This better be good," Elliot Voss answers, his voice gruff with interrupted sleep. "Some of us work nights, Pierce. Remember what that's like?" "Valor's alive. He's at County Animal Services." The words tumble out, raw and urgent. A pause, the sound of rustling sheets. "You sure? Not just wishful thinking?" "It's him, Elliot." Harlan's knuckles whiten on the steering wheel. "I'd know him anywhere, but they've got him registered to Norcross with a fake chip. Need your help pulling records, finding the paper trail. Give me an hour to get my shit together. The sound of determination replaces sleep in Elliot's voice. Meet at your place. I'll bring the hardware. Harlan drives home in a daze, muscle memory taking him through traffic lights and turn signals, while his mind races with implications and possibilities. Twice he nearly misses a stop sign, the world beyond his windshield blurring as past and present collide in his thoughts. In his spare room, he drags out the footlocker he'd promised himself to store away for good, the metal scraping across hardwood with a sound like distant gunfire. Inside, preserved in plastic sleeves and organized with military precision, are the deployment logs, training certificates, and service photos. A life documented in official papers and cherished memories. There's Valor at 8 months, all ears and paws, awkward in his growing body but already showing the focus that would make him exceptional. Valor achieving his certification, standing proud and alert beside a younger, less burdened Harlan. The two of them in dusty gear, exhausted but alive after a successful mission, desert sand still clinging to their clothes. The last photo, taken the morning before the transport, before the testimony, before everything went wrong. Harlan's throat tightens as he traces the outline of Valor's face through the plastic. Elliot arrives with coffee strong enough to strip paint and his old laptop with the government-grade security protocols. He sets everything down on Harlan's kitchen table, already rolling up his sleeves. Talk to me. What are we looking at here? Harlan spreads out the documents with methodical precision. They're claiming he's a private security asset. But look, here's his original Army registration, breeding records, service history from basic through 3 deployments. He taps each document emphatically. The dates don't lie. He was military property when he disappeared. The chip's the problem. Elliot pulls up databases, fingers flying over keys with practiced efficiency. The glow of the screen highlights the lines of concentration on his face. Norcross went under last year after that contract scandal. A lot of their assets just disappeared. Equipment, vehicles, apparently dogs, too. Convenient, Harlan says, bitterness edging his voice. Very. Elliot scribbles numbers on a notepad, cross-referencing between screens. Get me that case number again, and your service dates with him. We need to establish timeline inconsistencies. They spend hours cross-referencing, building a timeline that stretches across Harlan's living room wall with sticky notes and string. Elliot's security clearance opens doors Harlan's civilian status can't touch, revealing patterns in paperwork that wouldn't be visible to ordinary eyes. By morning, with empty coffee cups littering every surface, they have a folder of their own. Evidence impossible to ignore. The shelter is quiet when Harlan returns, early enough that the parking lot is nearly empty, just a few staff cars gathered near the side entrance. Laurel meets him at the door, dark circles under her eyes, suggesting she hasn't slept either, her auburn hair hastily repinned. I did some digging after you left, she says, leading him to her office through the silent corridors. The faint sounds of animals stirring for morning feeding creates a backdrop to their hurried footsteps. This isn't the first working dog that's come through with questionable paperwork. I've had concerns for months. Harlan sets his folder on her desk, careful not to disturb the organized chaos of her workspace. Can you pull up his chip data? The complete file? She nods, typing rapidly on her keyboard. The screen illuminates with strings of numbers and codes, registration dates, ID codes, transfer records, all appearing legitimate to an untrained eye. Look at this. Harlan points to a service photo, then to the original documentation he's brought. Army working dogs have a specific serial format, standardized across branches. But the chip they put in him? He taps the screen with a fingertip that trembles slightly with suppressed anger. Private security asset tag, dated 2 months after he disappeared from military custody. They didn't even try to match the military format. Didn't think anyone would check. Laurel leans forward, glasses slipping down her nose as she compares the numbers, expression growing more troubled with each comparison. And the aggression flag. She frowns, clicking through screens to reveal more data. It's dated before the surrender date. That's not possible unless someone had access to edit the records directly. Harlan's voice is grim, the pieces falling into place with terrible clarity. They're covering their tracks, but they got sloppy. Didn't account for someone recognizing him. "This is bigger than one dog, isn't it?" Laurel asks, pushing away from her computer to look directly at Harlan, the weight of realization in her eyes. Much bigger. Harlan watches through the window as the morning staff arrives, going about their routines, feeding, cleaning, caring for the animals with no idea of the corruption their work unwittingly supports. Somewhere in the building, Valor waits in his kennel, a living piece of evidence in a scheme they're just beginning to understand, loyal eyes probably fixed on the door, waiting for the return of the one person who had never failed him until now. "Pleading his case won't work," Harlan says finally, turning back to Laurel. "We need to prove theft, and I think you've seen enough to know this wasn't an isolated incident. How many other working dogs have come through here with similar paperwork?" Laurel takes off her glasses, rubbing tired eyes with the heel of her hand. The morning light catches on a silver necklace at her throat as she straightens her shoulders. Decision made. "What do you need from me?" "Access to records, similar cases, anything that shows a pattern." He meets her gaze, unflinching. "I know it's asking a lot. Could put your job at risk." She looks at the photos spread across her desk. Proof of a partnership forged in service, broken by corruption, the bond between handler and dog evident in every image. Her jaw sets in determination, a flash of fierce protectiveness crossing her face. "Let me show you our files," she says, standing with renewed purpose. "I've been keeping my own records for months. Something's been wrong here for a long time, and I'm tired of pretending not to notice." Laurel's office feels smaller, with papers spread across every surface. The overhead fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows on stacks of intake forms, making Harlan's eyes strain as they pore over the details. The smell of coffee gone cold mingles with the institutional scent of disinfectant and paper dust. Outside the window, the county shelter's perimeter fence stands stark against the fading daylight, a constant reminder of what's at stake. "Here," Laurel says, tapping a form with her pen. The tip makes a soft click against the paper. "Valor's intake, 2:15 a.m., no finder information, just stray surrender checked off." She pulls another folder from a chaotic pile, her movements betraying both fatigue and determination. "And look at this invoice marked Special Handling. The timestamp doesn't match standard processing procedures." Harlan leans closer, his knee protesting from standing too long. A familiar burning sensation crawls up his thigh, but he ignores it as he has for years. "Who authorizes special handling?" "That's just it. Normally it requires supervisor sign-off, but these are all rubber-stamped by the same county liaison." She shuffles through more papers, her auburn hair falling across her face as she bends forward. She absently tucks it behind her ear with ink-stained fingers. Same pattern, different dogs. All working breeds, all late-night intakes. German Shepherds, Belgian Malinois, Dutch Shepherds, all with training markers in their behavior assessments. His phone buzzes against his hip. An email from Elliot containing a notarized statement detailing Valor's identifying characteristics, the unique scar pattern on his muzzle from a training accident, his response to specific hand signals that weren't in any standard manual. The attachment includes photos that make Harlan's chest tighten with recognition, the diagonal white, mark above Valor's right eye, the distinctive pattern of his canines. "This helps," Harlan says, forwarding the document to his lawyer with fingers that move with practiced efficiency. "Proves identity beyond the chip. These are markers only Elliot and I would recognize from our deployment." Laurel types rapidly at her computer, the keyboard clacking in bursts of determined energy. Her glasses slip down her nose, but she doesn't pause to push them back up. "I'm marking his kennel for medical observation. It'll keep him isolated and buy us some time." She grimaces, the lines around her mouth deepening. "Though I've already gotten 3 calls from that county liaison asking about transfer protocols. His last message had a thinly veiled thread about my operational compliance." "They're moving fast," Harlan observes, feeling the familiar tightening in his gut that preceded combat. "Too fast. Normal strays sit for days before anyone shows interest." She leans back in her chair, which creaks under the shifting weight. "Most dogs wait a minimum of 72 hours. They were asking about Valor within 4. Back at his house, Harlan transforms his dining room into a war room. Maps and timelines cover the walls, lit by desk lamps that cast long shadows across the hardwood floor. Coffee cups accumulate as the evening deepens. Elliot's research reveals a web of shell companies spinning off from Norcross Protective, each with different names but identical board members, each dissolving and reforming in different states every 18 months. "Look at these dates," Elliot says, pointing to a timeline with his coffee mug, his buzz cut silhouetted against the lamplight. His eyes reflect a keen intelligence that military service had honed rather than dulled. "Valor disappeared right before you were supposed to testify about those missing supply manifests, 3 days before your scheduled appearance." Harlan's jaw tightens, a muscle flickering beneath the weathered skin. "They knew taking him would silence me. Who'd believe my testimony when I couldn't even keep track of my own dog?" His fingers curl into a fist against the table. "Made me look incompetent, unstable, the perfect discredit." His phone rings, his lawyer confirming the emergency filing to pause any euthanasia proceedings. "It's temporary," she warns, her voice tinny through the speaker. "But it gives us breathing room to build the case. Judge Barrett signed off on it, but he's asking for substantiation within 48 hours. Elliot spreads out more documents across the table, his movements economical and precise. These chip numbers, they're sequential. Someone was processing multiple dogs through the same system. Look at the registration dates, all within minutes of each other." The pieces start fitting together. Military working dogs, valuable for their training, disappeared into private hands. Valor wasn't lost. He was redirected, along with others, through a carefully constructed pipeline. Each animal represented thousands of dollars in specialized training, not to mention capabilities that weren't meant for private security firms. "How many others?" Harlan asks quietly, the question hanging in the air between them. Laurel calls, her voice tight with tension that crackles through the phone. "That liaison's getting pushier, asking about our isolation protocols, demanding facility inspection dates." She pauses, and Harlan can hear papers rustling in the background. "They know something's up. I caught one of the county vehicles circling the building twice during my lunch break." "We've got 48 hours before the initial hold expires," Harlan says, checking his watch, the same battered timepiece he'd worn through 3 deployments. "Keep stalling." "Already on it. I've flagged his file for possible medical quarantine. They can't transfer him until the test's clear." The sound of a door closing comes through the line. "I've also accidentally misplaced some of the transfer paperwork. Bureaucratic oversight." Harlan studies the evidence wall they've built. Service photos, shipping manifests with discrepancies highlighted in yellow, shell company registrations with identical signatures, unit rosters showing other missing dogs with red circles around their names. His fingers trace the connection points, feeling the weight of what they're uncovering. The wall tells a story of systematic theft masked by paperwork. This goes deeper than just valor, Elliot says, watching him with the same steady gaze that had kept them both alive overseas. You know that, right? The moment these questions hit the right desk, he doesn't finish the sentence. Doesn't need to. I know. Harlan straightens, his knee cracking loud enough for Elliot to wince in sympathy. But this time I'm ready for them. We've got documentation they don't know exists. The night deepens as they continue working, piecing together a puzzle of corruption that's been waiting 2 years to be solved. Rain begins pattering against the windows, creating shadows that dance across their evidence board. In the shelter across town, Valor waits in his kennel, both proof and victim of a scheme that's finally coming to light. His amber eyes watch the corridor, alert to every passing shadow. Laurel sends another text, the blue light of Harlan's phone illuminating his face in the dimly lit room. Security cameras showing unusual vehicle activity. Black SUV circled twice, keeping extra staff on tonight. Told them there's a virus concern. They're nervous, Elliot observes, emptying his 4th coffee mug of the evening. Starting to make mistakes. Good, Harlan replies, adding another document to the wall, his movements deliberate and precise. They should be. It's about time someone was held accountable. The porch boards creak just after midnight. Harlan's hand freezes on his coffee mug, old instincts snapping alert like a rubber band pulled too tight. 2 shadows stretch across his window. Men in dark suits, their shoes gleaming despite the late hour, the kind of polish that speaks of meticulous preparation and resources. His doorbell rings once, precise and measured, an intentional announcement rather than a casual visit. When he opens the door, their smiles are practiced, never reaching their eyes. The taller one speaks first. Mr. Pierce, sorry to disturb you so late. His voice carries the smooth confidence of someone used to getting his way. We wanted to discuss the stray you've been inquiring about, the second man adds. His tie pin catches the porch light, silver, expensive, corporate. The insignia etched into it too small to make out, but definitely not standard government issue. Harlan says nothing, reading their posture like a tactical report. They stand just far enough apart to flank if needed, weight balanced on the balls of their feet. Behind them, a black sedan idles at the curb, its windows tinted past legal limits, engine purring with controlled power. Simple misunderstanding? The first man continues, adjusting his cuff with manicured fingers. Best to let it go. Save everyone time and complications. His pause hangs in the air like the moment before a thunderclap. Complications, Harlan repeats flatly, tasting the threat in the word. Life's already challenging enough. The second man glances meaningfully at Harlan's knee, the slight bulge of his brace visible beneath worn denim. Your injury, this address, bit isolated. No neighbors for what, half a mile? And that shelter visit yesterday? Long drive on a bad leg. Must have been painful. His eyes never blink during the assessment. The threat slides under their words like a knife under silk, precise and deadly in its implication. Harlan catalogs details with military precision. Their shoes are tactical dress boots, painted to look formal but built for pursuit. Their jacket cuts hide shoulder holsters at precise angles for quick draws, and they move with the contained energy of men used to controlled violence, professionals who've drawn blood before and wouldn't hesitate to do so again. Consider it friendly advice, the first man says, straightening his already perfect tie. From professionals to a professional, we respect your service record. The mention of his record, information they shouldn't readily have, lands like another deliberate marker. They leave their card, blank but for a phone number printed in matte black ink, and return to their sedan with synchronized movements. Harlan watches until their taillights disappear around the bend, memorizing the license plate, though he suspects it's untraceable. Inside, he methodically checks his security cameras, reinforces his doors with the chair braces he installed years ago, and positions himself where he can see all entry points. Sleep doesn't come, just a vigilant waiting as his mind cycles through possibilities and contingencies. Hours later, his phone jolts him from his half-conscious state. Laurel's voice crackles through the speaker with static and alarm system warnings blaring in the background. "Power's dead," she says, panic edging her normally composed tone. "Backup generators failed too. Someone tampered with them. There's smoke in the storage wing, thick and spreading fast. The animals are—" Her cough cuts through her words. The call cuts out with a final burst of static. Harlan's already moving, muscle memory overriding fatigue as he grabs his keys and service flashlight with the reinforced edge. His knee protests with hot daggers of pain as he takes the porch steps 2 at a time, but adrenaline drowns the discomfort to a distant throb. The night air carries the acrid smell of electrical fire, distinct, chemical, and deliberate. He pushes his truck past speed limits, watching orange light bloom in his rearview mirror like a malevolent sunrise. Fire trucks wail in the distance, but he'll beat them there. Has to. The lives inside that building won't wait for official response times. The shelter looms dark except for emergency lights casting weak pools in the parking lot, barely illuminating the panic unfolding. Smoke threads from vents near the storage area, thickening by the second into roiling gray plumes. Laurel and a young tech, Kevin, Harlan remembers from their brief introduction yesterday, struggle with stacked crates near the main entrance, their faces streaked with soot and determination. "Fire suppression's down," Laurel shouts when she sees him, her voice hoarse from smoke. "Someone disabled the sprinklers manually. We're moving what we can, the cats and small animals first." Her hands tremble with exhaustion as she passes a carrier to Kevin. A crash echoes from inside, followed by the screech of buckling metal and the distinct sound of structural failure. The corridor door leading to the quarantine kennels warps in its frame, jammed by heat and pressure, its safety glass webbed with cracks. "Valor!" Harlan starts, his heart constricting. "Still inside," Laurel confirms, her eyes reflecting the growing flames. "That door's the only way to the isolation kennels. The exterior exit is chained shut. We found it padlocked from the outside." Harlan doesn't wait for further explanation. He hits the door with his good shoulder, feels it give slightly beneath the impact. The metal burns through his shirt, searing his skin. Again. The frame groans with reluctant protest. Kevin joins him, and together they slam against the barrier with synchronized force. Paint bubbles and peels around them as the fire feeds on stored supplies, paper, chemicals, bedding, generating toxic smoke that makes their eyes water and lungs seize. The door holds stubbornly, as if deliberately reinforced. Harlan presses his face close to the gap where door meets frame and whistles. 2 short notes, 1 long, the private signal that once meant hold position in distant combat zones across mountains and deserts where life hung on split-second commands. A hoarse whine answers from the kennel block. Then a bark. Urgent, familiar, frightened but unmistakable. Valor's voice, unchanged after years apart, cutting through chaos with recognition. The sound galvanizes him like an electric shock. He steps back, ignoring his knee's screaming protest that feels like ground glass beneath the joint, and drives his boot beside the buckled hinges with calculated force. Once, twice. The metal shrieks and gives, bending outward with a spray of rust and paint chips. Smoke pours through the opening like a living entity, seeking escape. The kennel alarms stutter and die with an electronic whimper, leaving only the crackle of approaching flames and the increasingly desperate barks of trapped dogs echoing down the corridor. This is no accident, Harlan knows with bone-deep certainty. The precise timing, the failed systems, the blocked escape route, the strategic targeting of the quarantine area. This is a message wrapped in flame, meant to eliminate evidence and end questions with permanent silence. But they didn't count on his training, on Laurel's preparation, on the bond that survived 2 years of separation and would not be broken by fire or threat. The door finally breaks free as the first tongues of orange flame lick the corridor ceiling, painting grotesque shadows on the walls. They have minutes, maybe less, before the whole wing goes up in an inferno designed to consume both truth and lives. "Kevin, get those crates to the parking lot," Laurel orders, her authority undiminished by fear. "Start triage with Dr. Mendez when she arrives. I'll help Harlan." Her eyes meet Harlan's with unspoken understanding. Some risks must be taken, regardless of consequences. The young tech nods and rushes out with his load, while Harlan and Laurel plunge into the smoke-filled corridor, pulling their shirts over their mouths as makeshift filters, moving against time and fire toward the desperate sounds of dogs fighting for their lives, and the one companion Harlan had never stopped searching for. Smoke burns Harlan's throat as he presses deeper into the corridor. The crowbar feels solid in his hands, a lifeline of cold steel against the growing inferno. Laurel moves beside him, her breathing harsh through the cloth pressed to her face. The kennel block door stands warped but intact, its metal surface radiating waves of heat. Through it, they hear the desperate scrabbling of claws and Valor's distinctive bark, now edged with panic. "Hold on, boy," Harlan mutters. He wedges the crowbar into the gap where the door meets its frame. His burned shoulders protest as he throws his weight against the makeshift lever. The metal groans but doesn't give. Sweat runs into his eyes, stinging with smoke. Behind him, Laurel drags empty carriers into position, ready for the moment they break through. "Valor!" Harlan's voice cracks. "Back up!" A whine answers, the dog understanding even now. Harlan counts, loud and clear, each number a promise. 1. The crowbar bites deeper. 2. Muscles strain against unyielding metal. 3. From the other side comes a solid thud as Valor launches his full weight at the door. The combined force snaps the latch with a sound like a gunshot. The door swings wide, releasing a wave of trapped heat and smoke. Valor bursts out first, pressing against Harlan's leg for half a second before helping herd the other dogs toward the carriers. His training holds even now: protect, gather, save. "Good boy," Harlan gasps. "That's my good boy." They work fast, Laurel and Harlan loading carriers while Valor keeps the scared dogs moving. Above them, the ceiling makes sounds like splitting wood. The last dog barely clears the corridor when a section of roof caves in behind them, bringing a cascade of burning debris. They stumble out into the parking lot as fire trucks scream into view, their red lights painting the smoke-filled night in surreal pulses. Rain starts falling, fat drops that hiss against the hot building. The sprinkler system finally kicks in, too late to matter. Harlan's lungs feel scraped raw, and his arms throb where the superheated door burned through his shirt. Paramedics descend on them with oxygen masks and burn cream. Harlan tries to wave them off, but Laurel gives him a look that brooks no argument. He submits to treatment, watching as a vet tech hooks up portable oxygen for the smoke-exposed dogs. Valor sits in his crate, amber eyes fixed on Harlan through the grate. His coat is sooty, but his gaze is clear and alert. Harlan reaches through the bars to stroke the dog's cheek, falling into their old rhythm, the same gentle touch that once calmed them both during midnight mortar fire. "Right here," he murmurs. "Not going anywhere." Laurel moves through the chaos with purpose, documenting everything. She points out the failed alarms to the fire marshal, noting how the system showed no signs of malfunction during yesterday's inspection. When she checks the security office, she finds gaps in the camera footage, selective blackouts that started just before the power failed. "This wasn't random," she tells Harlan, voice low and fierce. "The timing, the patterns. Someone wanted to make sure we couldn't prove what happened here." Harlan nods, still maintaining contact with Valor. The dog's breathing has steadied, matching the slow stroke of Harlan's hand. The bond between them pulses as strong as ever, defying the 2 years of separation. But they both know this night's victory is temporary. Tomorrow will bring questions about ownership, demands for documentation. The system that lost Valor once will try to claim him again, using paperwork and legal technicalities as weapons. They saved his life tonight, but the real fight, the fight for his future, still looms ahead. For now, though, Harlan focuses on the warm press of fur under his fingers, the steady thump of Valor's tail, and the miracle of finding each other again. They survived fire and betrayal. They'll face whatever comes next together. Emergency lights paint the scene in shifting shadows as firefighters contain the last of the blaze. The night air grows heavy with rain and smoke, but Harlan doesn't move from his vigil. He keeps his hand on Valor's cheek, repeating the gentle rhythm that once steadied them both through war zones, a touch that says safe and home and protected, even when none of those things are certain. Morning light filters weakly through the smoke-stained windows of Laurel's office. The small space feels even tighter with stacks of folders covering every surface, evidence of years spent documenting patterns others preferred to ignore. Harlan settles into a chair that's seen better days, his burned arms protesting. In the corner, Valor rests in his crate, alert despite the long night. His nails click rhythmically against the plastic floor, a steady counterpoint to the rustling of papers. "I've been tracking this for months," Laurel says, pulling files from a locked drawer. Her glasses are smudged, and dark circles shadow her eyes, but her movements are precise. "Look at these intake forms." She spreads invoices across her desk, each marked with the same coding. "Unclaimed working dog. Special handling required." The dates span 2 years, coinciding with Valor's disappearance. "These aren't standard shelter documents," she explains, pointing to irregularities in the paperwork. "Every one of these dogs came in through a specific channel, always after hours, always with the same authorization codes." Harlan leans forward, scanning the forms. His jaw tightens as he recognizes military-grade training markers poorly disguised as behavioral notes. Where did they go? That's where it gets interesting. Laurel pulls up a spreadsheet on her ancient computer. They were transferred to approved specialty facilities. But watch this. She overlays the transfer locations with business registrations. Company names shift and blur, but addresses repeat. Shell companies, all leading back to one familiar name: Norcross Protective Services. They weren't just taking Valor, Harlan says, the realization hitting him like a physical blow. They were running a pipeline. Converting military assets into private inventory, Laurel agrees grimly. The county shelter system was perfect cover, legitimate paperwork, established transport routes, no questions asked as long as the right forms were filed. Harlan pulls out his own records, the dates surrounding his planned testimony about contractor misconduct. The chip reassignment timestamps line up perfectly with the week Valor vanished. They knew I was going to talk. This wasn't just about silencing me. They were protecting their whole operation. In his crate, Valor's nails click faster, picking up on Harlan's tension. The dog's amber eyes track between them, reading their body language just as he once read patrol zones for threats. Laurel removes her glasses, rubbing tired eyes. I started noticing patterns when I took over the shelter. Budget numbers that didn't add up, special protocols that bypassed normal channels. Every time I pushed back, I got shut down by county policy. Her voice carries years of frustrated suspicion. They weren't just bending rules, they were using the whole system as a front. She pulls out more recent files. Then they started dumping dogs back into the system, ones that were too recognizable, too hard to control, or showed signs of their original training, like Valor. Harlan studies his partner through the crate bars. The scars on Valor's muzzle tell their own story, of resistance, of refusing to forget his true purpose. They couldn't break him, he says softly, so they tried to bury him. But they made mistakes, Laurel says, determination replacing exhaustion. They left traces. These intake forms, transfer records, chip registrations, it's all connected if we can prove it in court. Harlan sorts through the evidence, military precision taking over. We need more than patterns. We need hard proof that links Norcross to the county contracts, bank records, communication trails, witnesses who can verify the handoffs. And we need it fast, Laurel adds. After last night's fire, they know we're onto them. They'll try to clean house, destroy records. Valor watches them intently, the same focused gaze he once gave to patrol briefings. His presence reminds Harlan of everything at stake. Not just one dog's future, but justice for every animal caught in this corrupt pipeline. We expose it all, Harlan says, conviction hardening his voice. The whole operation, the thefts, the cover-ups, the profit scheme. Make it too big to bury. Laurel nods, already pulling more files. I have contacts at the State Oversight Board, journalists who've investigated shelter fraud. People who'll listen if we bring them solid evidence. The morning sun strengthens, highlighting the smoke damage on the walls, a reminder of how far their opponents will go. But in that same light, Harlan sees the truth laid out in paper trails and digital records. They've found the rot at the core of the system. Now they just need to prove it. Valor's nails click against his crate, a sound like counting down. His training never failed, only the humans who betrayed it. Harlan meets his partner's steady gaze, reading the same determination he feels. Together, they'll uncover the truth that was stolen from them both. The autumn wind cuts across the abandoned rail yard, stirring dead leaves and memories. It whistles through the skeletal remains of old loading platforms and rusted track switches, carrying the scent of decay and distant diesel. Harlan's knee protests with each careful step as he navigates the uneven ground, sending sharp reminders of old wounds up his leg, but his focus remains razor sharp. This was where it all began, countless hours of training in rain and shine, building the unbreakable trust that made him and Valor an unbeatable team, forging a bond in this forgotten corner of the world that neither time nor treachery could fully sever. "This is where you did your drills?" Laurel asks, pulling her jacket tighter against the chill that seems to seep through the fabric straight to her bones. Her breath forms tiny clouds that dissipate in the breeze. Every morning for 2 years, Harlan confirms, his eyes scanning the yard with the practiced efficiency of someone who once knew every inch of this terrain. He reaches down to adjust the worn leather collar around Valor's neck, the same one from their service days, its edges softened by years of use, retrieved from his box of memories tucked away in the back of his closet. We'd run scenarios until we could do them blindfolded, practice detection patterns that could mean life or death overseas, hide and seek with deadly stakes. Valor's posture changes visibly the moment they cross the old yard boundary, as if crossing an invisible line into his past. His ears prick forward with renewed alertness, tail lifting with unmistakable purpose. Despite the years apart, his training surfaces like muscle memory, washing away the intervening hardships in an instant. "Remember the game, boy?" Harlan keeps his voice steady and commanding, using the particular cadence and tone that once guided them through minefields and hostile territory. "Find it!" Valor's nose drops immediately to the ground, tracking invisible trails through the scattered gravel and debris. His movements are precise and economical, each turn and pause deliberate as his senses process information humans could never detect. Laurel watches in amazement as dog and handler fall into their old rhythm, a dance perfected through thousands of repetitions. "He's still got it," she whispers, not wanting to break the spell of concentration between them. "Never lost it," Harlan replies, a note of pride warming his voice as he watches his partner work. They couldn't train it out of him because it's not just training, it's who he is. It's in his blood, his heart. They might have stolen him, but they couldn't change what we built. Valor veers suddenly toward a patch of scrubby undergrowth, his pace quickening with newfound purpose. The dried stalks crunch beneath his powerful paws as he begins to dig with growing urgency, throwing up clouds of dust and small stones. Harlan moves closer, recognition dawning in his eyes, the memory clicking into place like a key turning in a lock. "This was our backup drop," he explains to Laurel, who follows carefully behind. "Standard protocol for field operations. Always have a secure cache point if comms went dark. Something goes wrong, you leave intel where only your team knows to find it." The dog's claws strike metal with a dull clang that seems to hang in the cold air. Beneath the dirt emerges a rectangular tin container, military green and weathered but its seal, still intact despite the years buried in obscurity. Harlan's hands are remarkably steady as he extracts it, muscle memory taking over as he meticulously checks for tampering or trigger mechanisms, a habit he never lost. "Someone used our protocol," he says quietly, his voice dropping with the weight of realization. "Someone who knew our routines, our methods, someone on the inside." Inside the tin, wrapped carefully in oilcloth that protected it from moisture and time, they find a broken body camera and a micro SD card nestled in its protective case. The camera's lens is cracked like a spiderweb, its casing dented and scraped, but the crucial card slot remains protected by the design built to withstand battlefield conditions. "This is military-grade equipment," Laurel observes, carefully examining the camera as they crouch in the wind-swept yard. "Not something you'd find in civilian surplus or police auctions. This is the real deal, restricted tech." They return to Laurel's cluttered office at the shelter, where her ancient desktop computer whirs and protests as it comes to life, fan spinning frantically against the dust of disuse. The SD card slots in with a satisfying click, and suddenly the screen fills with footage, grainy and occasionally distorted, but clear enough to tell a damning story that makes their breath catch. A warehouse interior appears, industrial and vast, stacked with crates and kennels arranged in military precision. Flames lick up one wall, while men in protective gear rush with suspicious coordination to salvage specific containers, ignoring others closer to the spreading fire. The camera angle shifts, showing workers efficiently relabeling chips and transferring documents from one folder to another. "There," Harlan points, his finger trembling slightly against the screen. "Upper right corner, by the office door." A tall figure in an expensively tailored suit moves through the chaos with unnatural calm, like a conductor orchestrating a symphony of destruction and deception. Clive Norcross, his aristocratic features illuminated by the spreading fire, signs papers with practiced efficiency on a clipboard held by a nervous-looking subordinate. "Asset reassignment authorized," his voice carries clearly over the crackle of flames, the cultured tones at odds with the emergency unfolding around him. "Ensure all identification is updated according to protocol. I want these assets distributed within 48 hours. The footage continues for another 20 minutes, revealing a systematic operation disguised as an emergency response. Dogs with unmistakable military bearing and training are transferred to unmarked vehicles, while their documentation disappears into new folders with different logos. Frightened barks punctuate the methodical activity as cages are moved and relabeled. They weren't just covering their tracks, Laurel says, her voice tight with outrage as she watches. They were transforming evidence into inventory, right before our eyes, making these dogs disappear on paper while physically moving them into their operation. The SD card contains more than video evidence. Embedded folders reveal email threads that detail the methodology behind the operation, clinical discussions of chip updates, and placement optimization for reclaimed assets. Each message carefully avoids explicit language while spelling out their real purpose in bureaucratic code designed to maintain plausible deniability. Valor rests his head on Harlan's knee throughout the viewing, a warm weight grounding him as the evidence builds on screen. The dog's amber eyes occasionally flick up to his handler's face, sensing the tension building in the man he's finally found again. His partner was just one piece in a larger puzzle, a puzzle they can finally solve together. "No wonder they tried to stop you from testifying," Laurel says softly, her hand finding Harlan's shoulder in a gentle gesture of support. This wasn't just about contractor misconduct or cutting corners on equipment. It was an entire shadow operation dealing in living, breathing military assets. Harlan takes a slow, controlled breath, the kind that steadied his aim in the field when lives depended on his next shot. The suspicions that have haunted him for 2 long years, feeding his isolation and pain, have transformed into hard evidence that cannot be ignored or explained away. The fight ahead is clear now, not just for Valor, but for every dog caught in their pipeline, every animal betrayed by the system meant to protect them. Laurel's office becomes their command center as morning light filters through dusty blinds. Coffee cups litter the desk while they spread their evidence across every available surface. The video footage plays on a loop, each viewing revealing new details they can use. "I know someone who might help," Laurel says, reaching for her phone. "Sarah Chen in the DA's office. She's been trying to crack down on animal trafficking rings for years." Harlan nods, watching Valor doze in the corner. "Can she be trusted?" "She turned down 2 promotions because they would have moved her away from animal welfare cases," Laurel replies, already dialing. "If anyone will understand the significance of this, it's her." The conversation with the assistant district attorney is brief but promising. Sarah agrees to review their evidence privately, understanding the need for discretion. "Bring everything you have," she tells Laurel, "but come through the back entrance." Meanwhile, Elliot works remotely, his security expertise proving invaluable. His voice crackles through the speakerphone as he walks them through his findings. "These shell companies are like Russian nesting dolls," he explains, sending them a detailed flowchart. Norcross Protective splits into 3 subsidiaries, each handling different aspects of the operation. 1 for acquisition, 1 for processing, 1 for placement. Money flows through offshore. Accounts then circles back clean. Harlan studies the diagram, recognizing the military precision in its organization. "They copied our protocols," he says grimly, "used our own security measures against us." Elliot grunts in agreement. "Classic tactics, but they got sloppy. Left too many connections visible if you know where to look." While Laurel coordinates with the DA's office, Harlan reaches out to his old network. 2 retired handlers, Mike Torres and Dave Chen, agree to help immediately. They remember Valor from joint training exercises and express outrage at learning of his fate. "We'll submit affidavits," Mike promises. "Detail every step of proper military chip protocols. Show how these replacements couldn't have been legitimate." Dave adds his own expertise about identification procedures. I'll break down the exact requirements for transferring a military working dog, highlight every regulation they violated. Harlan and Laurel spend hours crafting the motion for a temporary stay. They focus on irrefutable facts, dates that don't align, paperwork inconsistencies, violated procedures. Each point is supported by multiple sources of evidence. Keep emotion out, Harlan reminds himself, deleting another adjective from his statement. Just the facts. Laurel watches him struggle with the clinical tone. It's okay to care, she says softly. Not in court, he responds, fingers hovering over the keyboard. They'll use any hint of personal involvement to discredit me. They craft the press tip with surgical precision, creating a document that can't be ignored but won't show their full hand. Key names, locations, and dates are laid out in clear sequence, each allegation supported by public records. We hold back the video until we have a warrant, Laurel confirms, securing the SD card in her safe. But this should be enough to start asking official questions. Around them, the shelter buzzes with controlled activity. Laurel has implemented new security measures, changing access codes, and installing additional cameras. She's assigned her most trusted staff members to rotating shifts watching Valor's kennel. No one enters without dual authentication, she instructs her team. Document everything. If anyone asks questions about him, direct them to me. The staff understand the stakes. Many have suspected problems with the county's handling of working dogs, but never had proof. Now they move with renewed purpose, protecting not just Valor, but the chance to expose systemic abuse. Harlan practices his testimony in front of a mirror, stripping away layers of anger and pain until only verifiable statements remain. Each word is chosen carefully, backed by documentation. On February 15th, 2 years ago, Valor was scheduled for routine transport, he rehearses. The paperwork showed arrival at Fort Bennett at 0900 hours. Security footage from that day shows no such arrival. Elliot listens to his practice sessions via video call, offering suggestions to strengthen the narrative. Lead with the paper trail, he advises. Build the timeline before introducing the conspiracy angle. Throughout their preparations, Valor remains a steady presence, his alertness reflecting years of training. He responds to each visitor with professional assessment, relaxing only when Harlan signals all clear. He never stopped being a working dog, Laurel observes, watching him scan the room. They couldn't erase that, no matter how they tried to hide his identity. Their strategy takes shape. Secure Valor's safety through legal channels while simultaneously exposing the larger criminal enterprise. Each team member knows their role, understands the sequence of necessary steps. We move everything through proper channels, Harlan emphasizes during their final planning session. By the book. Give them no procedural openings to challenge. The evidence is organized, backed up, and distributed to secure locations. Statements are notarized, documents cataloged, chain of custody established for every piece of proof. They're building a case that can withstand both legal scrutiny and public exposure. The courthouse clerk's call comes at 10:15 in the morning. Harlan fumbles with his phone, heart pounding as he listens to the formal language that takes 3 sentences to deliver the essential news. Judge Marion Patterson has granted their emergency motion for a temporary stay. The order prohibits any transfer or euthanasia of the animal in question pending full adjudication of ownership. The clerk recites. You'll receive the official documentation within the hour. Harlan's hands shake as he dials Laurel. She answers on the first ring, her voice tight with anticipation. We got it, he says simply. The stay came through. He hears her sharp intake of breath, followed by what might be a sob or a laugh. I'll get the paperwork posted immediately, she manages. No one touches him without going through the court now. Within minutes, his email pings with a PDF from the ADA's office. The warrant for the rail yard warehouse has been approved. Evidence collection teams will move in by afternoon. Harlan reads the documents twice, letting the legal language sink in. Each paragraph represents another layer of protection, another step toward justice. His phone buzzes constantly now, reporters catching wind of the story, seeking comment on allegations of systematic trafficking of military working dogs. A statement appears on the Norcross corporate website, bland and dismissive. Norcross Protective Services categorically denies any wrongdoing in its handling of canine assets. We maintain strict compliance with all relevant regulations and welcome any official inquiry. Harlan snorts at the carefully crafted corporate speak. He remembers the smoke in the shelter, the men on his porch, the years of silence around Valor's disappearance. No amount of PR spin can erase those realities. The shelter feels different when he arrives, an energy of cautious optimism replacing the tension of recent days. Staff members nod as he passes, sharing small smiles of victory. They've all become invested in this fight, seeing in Valor's case the chance to address long-held concerns about the system. Laurel meets him by the isolation kennels, clipboard in hand. Dark circles shadow her eyes, but she's grinning. We've scheduled the court-mandated veterinary evaluation for tomorrow at 9, she says. Dr. Peterson agreed to handle it. She's certified for expert testimony if needed. Good choice, Harlan agrees. He's met Peterson before, knows her reputation for thorough documentation and unshakable professional ethics. They walk together to Valor's kennel. The Malinois rises immediately, tail low but relaxed, reading their calm energy. Harlan kneels by the gate, extending his hand palm up. Valor presses his head into it, exhaling a long breath that seems to release years of tension. Hey, partner, Harlan murmurs, feeling the warm weight against his palm. We're getting there. Just hold on a little longer. Laurel leans against the wall, watching them with tired satisfaction. You know, she says softly, I've spent so many years fighting the system from inside, trying to protect animals from bureaucratic indifference. Sometimes it felt impossible to make real change. She gestures at the court order, posted prominently on Valor's kennel. This feels like maybe we can actually win one. Harlan understands the feeling. He's carried the weight of unanswered questions and buried truth for so long, it seems almost unreal to see justice finally grinding into motion. But the evidence is solid, the legal groundwork laid with meticulous care. They review security procedures one more time, though the staff could recite them in their sleep by now. 2 people present for any interaction with Valor. All visitors logged and verified. Cameras recording 24/7. They take no chances, even with the court's protection in place. The warrant execution should start soon, Harlan notes, checking his watch. He pictures evidence teams moving through the rail yard warehouse, documenting everything they find. Elliot's standing by to help interpret any military documentation they uncover. Laurel nods, stifling a yawn. Go home, she says. Get some rest. We've got the overnight covered, and tomorrow we'll be busy with the vet exam. He wants to argue, to stay close to Valor now that they've made progress. But exhaustion pulls at him, and he knows she's right. They need to stay sharp, ready for whatever comes next. At home, Harlan moves through his evening routine with military precision. He sets his boots by the door, positioned for quick access. His phone rests on his chest, fully charged, volume up. The habits of heightened alertness are familiar, comfortable. For the first time since hearing Valor's bark in the shelter, he allows himself to truly rest. Sleep comes easier than expected, though it remains light. A soldier's sleep, aware even in repose. His dreams are fragments of memory. Desert patrols, training sessions, quiet moments of trust built over years of partnership. The night passes in cycles of rest and brief waking, each time confirming that his phone hasn't rung, that no emergency has shattered their fragile progress. Outside his window, the city sleeps, unaware that in courtrooms and kennels and warehouses, a small battle for justice is finally turning their way. Valor's presence echoes in his mind, that steady pressure against his palm, the unwavering gaze that says their connection survived separation and subterfuge. They've won breathing room, carved out space for truth to emerge. It's not victory yet, but it's a start. The afternoon sun slants through the shelter windows when Harlan's phone buzzes. Laurel's voice comes through tight and breathless. "Get here, now." He's already moving before she finishes, bad knee protesting as he takes the stairs 2 at a time. The drive to the shelter stretches endless, every red light an eternity. His hands grip the steering wheel until his knuckles go white. The parking lot churns with activity, animal control vehicles, a county SUV, shelter staff clustering in worried knots. Harlan's stomach drops before he even reaches the door. Inside, Laurel stands in the middle of her office, face pale with fury. Papers scatter her desk like fallen leaves. "They had badges," she says. "County Animal Services credentials. The paperwork looked real. Transfer orders, health certificates, everything." "Who authorized it?" Harlan's voice comes out steady, masking the terror clawing at his chest. "That's just it." Laurel rifles through the forms with trembling hands. "Sarah, she's new, just started last month. She was alone at the desk when they came. Said they were conducting a routine inspection, showed her documentation that seemed to check out. By the time I got back from the courthouse..." She swallows hard. Valor was already gone. Harlan's knees go weak. He grabs the edge of Laurel's desk, steadying himself. "The court order..." They had what looked like a modification order. Sarah didn't know to question it. Laurel runs a hand through her disheveled hair. "I've already called the judge's office. They never issued any such thing." The surveillance room yields nothing but static, an hour of footage corrupted beyond recovery. The transfer forms Sarah remembered signing have vanished. Even the visitor log shows no trace of the supposed county officers. Harlan paces the kennel area, his limp more pronounced with each turn. The empty space where Valor should be yawns like an open wound. His mind cycles through the failure. First losing his partner to bureaucratic shadows, now losing him again when safety seemed within reach. "I've got the ADA on speaker," Laurel says, phone balanced on her palm. The prosecutor's voice crackles through, sharp with concern. "This is a direct violation of the stay order. I'm filing for emergency sanctions, but we need to move fast. Did anyone get vehicle descriptions? License plates?" Sarah shakes her head, tears tracking down her cheeks. "They parked around back. I never saw..." "Standard procedure for official visits," Harlan cuts in. "They knew the protocols. This wasn't amateur hour." He forces himself to think past the panic, to apply the tactical assessment that kept him alive in combat. Assets. The court order still stands legally, even if violated. The ADA is engaged and angry. Most importantly, they have something the opposition doesn't know about. "The whistle code," he says suddenly. "Valor's individual recall signal. It's not in any official records. We developed it in the field." He turns to Laurel. "How many working dogs have come through here showing military training?" She catches his meaning immediately. "We can narrow the search area. Private facilities licensed for handling service animals, locations that could hold a dog without attracting attention." The ADA's voice sharpens with interest. "Get me coordinates. I'll have patrol units ready to move once we have probable cause." Night settles over the city like a heavy blanket. Harlan stands in the shelter parking lot, letting the darkness sharpen his other senses. Traffic hums in the distance. A siren wails and fades. Somewhere in this maze of streets and buildings, Valor waits. He lifts the whistle to his lips, not the standard police issue, but the hand-carved wooden one that's traveled thousands of miles in his pocket. The pattern is unique. 2 short bursts, a pause, then one long note that slides up at the end. It carried over gunfire and sandstorms, guided them through the worst nights. The sound cuts through the city noise, clear and demanding. Harlan counts seconds, straining to hear an answering bark that doesn't come. He moves to another location, tries again. The whistle call floats over parking lots and chain-link fences, seeking its other half. His phone vibrates. Laurel, coordinating with police to check locations matching their criteria. The ADA's team works to trace the fake credentials back to their source. But Harlan knows time is critical. Every hour increases the chance that Valor will be moved again, disappeared more thoroughly. He lifts the whistle once more, pushing down memories of the first loss. Not again. Not when they were so close. The code rings out, a question waiting for its answer in the dark. A distant siren pierces the night, its wail rising and falling through the urban canyon like a ghostly tide. Harlan holds his breath between the echoes, straining to filter the city's chaos through years of finely tuned instinct. Then, 3 sharp barks cut through the noise, precisely spaced in the pattern he and Valor perfected across countless missions, in dust-choked villages and mountain passes, where their lives depended on silent communication. His heart pounds against his ribs. As he moves, each step measured despite his knees' vicious protest. Old shrapnel shifts beneath scar tissue, but adrenaline dulls the familiar pain. The sound bounces off warehouse walls and empty loading docks, distorting and multiplying, but years of tracking experience guide him through the maze of industrial streets. His fingers fumble for his phone with barely controlled urgency, updating the ADA's team while keeping his whistle at ready, the metal warm from being clutched in his palm all night. "Southeast, moving toward the rail corridor," he reports, voice clipped and professional despite the emotion threatening to choke him. 3-beat response, military cadence. "It's him. It's definitely him." The city grid funnels towards the railway, where ancient spurs snake between modern developments like forgotten veins in concrete flesh. A box truck idles at a red light ahead, its suspension sitting noticeably low under hidden weight. Even at this distance, Harlan's trained eye catches the telltale signs that civilian traffic would miss. Weight distribution wrong for normal cargo, reinforced rear doors with aftermarket locks, the kind of anonymous white paint job that blends into any background, but shows every scrape and dent under the harsh streetlights. He lifts the whistle again, letting out their signal. 2 short, 1 long, the pattern that had called Valor home across battlefields and training grounds. The response comes immediately, muffled but unmistakable through metal walls, carrying the distinctive pitch he'd know anywhere, even in his sleep. The truck's brake lights flare as the driver checks mirrors, a sudden alertness betraying guilty awareness. Tires screech behind him on wet pavement. Laurel's pickup pulls alongside, her face set with determined fury through the open window, auburn hair escaping its practical tie. "I'm not sitting this one out," she says, leaving no room for argument, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. "Got patrol units converging from 3 directions. They need 4 minutes to get into position, not a second more." Harlan nods, mind racing through angles and options like the tactical exercises that once kept him alive. The truck's height matches loading dock standards, easy transfer points at any warehouse with minimal visibility. Once it hits the service roads threading through industrial parks, it could disappear into a maze of legitimate shipping traffic and vanish behind more forged paperwork and corporate smokescreens. "We need to slow them down," he says, studying sightlines and street layout with the practiced eye of someone who once planned extraction routes under enemy fire. Buy time for backup to get in position before they realize they're being followed. His gaze fixes on a construction site ahead, where temporary barriers narrow the road to one lane, creating a natural bottleneck in the urban landscape. Laurel follows his look, her intelligence immediately grasping his intention. "My truck could have engine trouble right about there," she says, a hint of grim satisfaction in her voice. "Complete coincidence, of course. Terrible timing for them." "Complete coincidence," Harlan agrees, the ghost of a smile touching his weathered face. He checks his phone. The ADA's message confirms units moving into position, but they need those critical minutes to establish a clean stop with no escape routes. No mistakes, not when they're this close. The light changes from red to green, casting an emerald glow across rain-slicked pavement. The box truck's engine rumbles as it starts forward, diesel fumes hanging in the damp night air. Harlan slides into Laurel's passenger seat, keeping his whistle ready, the metal warm against his palm. They can't lose the signal now. Not when they're this close to ending the nightmare that started 2 years ago in a courthouse parking lot where Valor was supposed to be safe. "Make it look good," he says quietly as Laurel eases into traffic, his eyes never leaving the truck's profile. The vehicle looms in their mirrors, anonymous and threatening in the sodium glare of streetlights. But inside that steel box, a partner waits. One who's already survived being stolen once, who's fought through fire and darkness to find his way back, driven by a loyalty that transcends human understanding. Harlan grips the dashboard as Laurel positions them perfectly, her pickup angled to maximize the bottleneck ahead, without looking deliberate. His whistle sits ready between his fingers, their lifeline to the precious cargo behind them. They will not let Valor disappear again. Not into the shadows of false documents and corporate shell games, not into the places where loyal service dogs vanish and emerge with new identities, their training weaponized for private profit instead of public service. The patrol units are moving into place, lights dark but closing the net, invisible threads tightening around their target. 4 minutes. They just need 4 minutes to bring Valor home and begin unraveling the corruption that stole him. Harlan watches the seconds tick by on the dashboard clock, each one bringing them closer to reunion or heartbreak. Laurel eases her pickup toward the construction zone, the engine coughing dramatically. She hits her hazards, the yellow blinks reflecting off concrete barriers. The box truck looms closer in their mirrors, its headlights harsh and impatient. "Perfect spot," Harlan murmurs, watching the driver's growing frustration through the side mirror. The narrow passage leaves no room for the larger vehicle to squeeze past. The truck's horn blares. Laurel makes a show of trying to restart her engine, each attempt more theatrical than the last. Through the mirrors, Harlan catches movement, the driver reaching for a phone, gesturing angrily. Red and blue lights flash in the distance. It's time. Laurel guns the engine, tires squealing as she whips the pickup sideways, blocking the yard's entrance. Then truck driver realizes too late. He's boxed in with concrete barriers on one side and Laurel's strategic positioning on the other. Harlan's out before the truck can reverse, his bad knee screaming as he launches himself onto the running board. The metal step groans under his weight. His fingers find purchase on the door handle as the driver swerves, trying to shake him off. The door rips open with a metallic shriek. Inside, shadows and bodies collide in the confined space. A fist grazes Harlan's jaw, but he uses the truck's momentum, letting physics do the work. He doesn't need speed anymore, just leverage and the patience learned through years of close-quarters training. Metal glints in the driver's hand, a weapon emerging from concealment. But before he can level it, Harlan's voice cuts through the chaos with a command he's given 1,000 times. "Packin'!" Valor erupts from the shadows like a muscle-bound missile, powerful jaws clamping the driver's wrist with surgical precision. The dog applies exactly enough pressure to immobilize without maiming, the perfect control that made him legendary in service. The weapon clatters to the floor as police cruisers flood the yard, their lights painting everything in strobing red and blue. Officers swarm the scene with practiced efficiency, securing the driver while others head for the cargo area. The truck's rear doors swing wide, revealing stacks of plastic crates. Inside, hundreds of microchips catch the light, along with folders stuffed with transfer documentation. Evidence of the entire pipeline, packed and ready for transit. Footsteps approach, expensive shoes on gravel. Clive Norcross strides into the yard like he owns it, flanked by corporate security. His polished facade cracks slightly at the sight of drawn weapons and badges. "There seems to be some confusion," he begins smoothly. "I'm here to resolve a simple logistics." The ADA steps forward, warrant held high. "The only thing you'll be resolving is your right to remain silent, Mr. Norcross." Harlan tunes out the legal proceedings, the Miranda rights, the clinking of handcuffs. His world has narrowed to the truck's cargo area, where he sits with his back against the wall, Valor's solid weight pressed against his chest. The dog's fur rises and falls with each breath, real and alive and finally, truly found. The night air carries sirens and radio chatter, the sounds of justice catching up to corruption. But here in this metal box, there is only the steady thump of two hearts beating in sync, guardian and partner, together again after far too long. The courthouse steps gleamed in the morning sun as reporters gathered, hungry for details about the Norcross case. Inside, justice moved with deliberate precision through fluorescent-lit hallways and wood-paneled chambers. Federal prosecutors laid out the charges like dominoes: trafficking of military assets, falsification of identification records, conspiracy to commit fraud, and evidence tampering. Each count carried weight, but it was the paper trail that proved devastating. The chip records from the truck provided an unbroken chain of illegal transfers, each one a nail in Norcross's corporate coffin. Assistant U.S. Attorney Sarah Chen presented footage from the recovered body cam, her voice steady as she detailed dates and locations. On screen, Norcross himself appeared, signing off on what he called asset reassignments, while crated dogs waited in the background. The defense team's attempts to suppress the evidence crumbled against the weight of proper warrants and clear documentation. County officials began falling next. Commissioner Bradley resigned ahead of indictment. Two senior administrators faced charges for accepting bribes to expedite paperwork. The shelter system's entire oversight board underwent restructuring as the full scope of corruption emerged. Through it all, Harlan attended every hearing, his presence a quiet reminder of the human cost behind the legal proceedings. He sat in the back, knee aching against hard benches, watching justice catch up to those who had treated loyalty like a commodity. The day of Valor's hearing arrived without fanfare. Courtroom 3 was nearly empty, just Harlan, Laurel, the ADA, and a handful of officials. Judge Monica Reynolds studied the thick folder of evidence with reading glasses perched low on her nose. "The documentation is comprehensive," she noted, reviewing Valor's original service records, the proof of his illegal transfer, and his subsequent recovery. "The military has formally released any claim, given the circumstances of retirement age and recovered status." She looked up, eyes sharp despite the early hour. "Mr. Pierce, you understand the responsibilities of taking custody. This animal has been through significant trauma." Harlan stood, spine straight despite his limp. "Yes, Your Honor. I've been Valor's handler since his initial training. I understand his needs." The judge nodded, her pen moving across the official order with practiced strokes. "Then by the power vested in me by the state, I hereby grant full custody and ownership of the service animal designated as Valor to Harlan Pierce, with all rights and responsibilities therein." The gavel fell with a soft tap that seemed to echo through Harlan's chest. Just like that, years of loss and searching crystallized into a single moment of restoration. Outside the courtroom, Harlan knelt carefully beside Valor, who sat with perfect posture, alert but calm. From his pocket, Harlan withdrew his last service ribbon, the bronze star they'd earned together during their final deployment. His fingers worked deliberately, securing the medal to Valor's collar. "This belongs to both of us," he said softly, smoothing the fabric. Valor pressed his scarred muzzle into Harlan's palm, their private language of trust unchanged by time. Laurel stood nearby, her presence warm and steady. The bandages on her arm from the shelter, fire were mostly hidden by her sleeve, but Harlan caught glimpses as she moved. She'd fought alongside him, risked everything to protect Valor and expose the truth. When she reached for his hand, her grip was gentle but sure. Their eyes met, and Harlan saw in her face the promise of something he'd stopped believing in. A future where scars could heal, where broken pieces could fit together into something whole. Her smile held no pity, only understanding and possibility. The drive home felt different, weighted with completion rather than anticipation. Valor sat in the back seat, head held high as he watched the familiar streets pass. His reflection in the rearview mirror overlapped with memories of countless other drives, to training, to deployment, to missions that tested their bond against fire and fear. At home, Harlan moved with purpose through his evening routine. He filled Valor's old steel bowl with fresh water, then set down a new one beside it filled with premium kibble. The sound of dual bowls touching the floor filled a silence he hadn't fully acknowledged until now. Valor ate with military precision, then settled onto the rug near Harlan's feet. His sigh seemed to release years of tension, a sound of absolute contentment. The dog's body relaxed completely for the first time since their reunion, trust overcoming ingrained vigilance. Harlan eased into his chair, feeling the house shift around them. The spaces that had echoed with absence now hummed with life. Each breath, each small movement, each quiet moment of companionship filled the room with the simple rightness of being home. Truly home, at last. The walls that had held only memories now contained promise. Laurel would visit tomorrow, bringing her quiet strength and gentle humor. But for now, it was enough to sit in the growing dark, his hand resting on Valor's head, their hearts beating in the same steady rhythm they'd found years ago in desert nights and city streets. Here, in this moment, the long circle of loss and searching finally closed. The house was no longer a shelter for ghosts of what had been, but a home alive with what was and what could be. Complete.